So that was a long-winded way to say, yeah, thank you to Raito and Noctis, who helped me out tremendously with this. A lot. Okay, so Gordeau. I guess I should give like an initial impression and then just get into his moveset, right? I feel like the one initial thing that I always thought when I was first playing this character, or playing against this character, is that this character has like really long range, right? I'm like, wow, this character has like really long range, and sort of there's a lot of these like obstacles that you have to get around, right? And then sort of later on when I learned the character, or learning the character, I should say, I learned way more about how the character actually feels like he has kind of short range. And this was the weirdest thing that I sort of encountered when I started sort of really playing the character against other people online, was like, this move, although being long range, is kind of slower than some of the other moves in its caliber. And the same thing with things like Mortal Slide and Grim Reaper. Well, Grim Reaper's unsafe, but it is about the speed as some other stuff. And so it came down to this character was like, this character is kind of slow. And it was really weird, because I never thought this character as being slow. But when you play him, you really feel like this character is slow. So that was like my first initial impression of playing as the character. So this is sort of, a lot of this will be done with this kept in mind, right? And then I'll sort of go over like a general idea of the archetype of the character after we go through like a little bit of the moveset and stuff like that, right? I think you'll get it as we go along. So, other than that, like system mechanics, his dash speed's kind of slow. It's slower than average, but he has a great backdash that's pretty darn speedy. Secondarily also is that he moves pretty fast once he actually gets started dashing up, so that's nice. He's kind of big, which is a problem because there's a lot of characters that have big specific combos, and that includes characters like Wallstein and Enkidu. So sometimes he gets hit by harder combos of some other characters. But for the most part, you don't see a lot of that, so that's not that big of a deal. I'm trying to think of other system mechanics that are pretty interesting. We'll just get to it as we go along. Okay. So, just going through the move, like all the other times, go through the moveset. Oh, system mechanics. His system mechanic is, or his unique trait is that he has a command grab called Assimilation, which will steal grid from the opponent, as you can see. So, oops, I have 0 grid right now. If I go in and I steal, or I go and hit Assimilation, I get a little bit of extra. This is also done from his Rekkas off of Mortal Slide, which will also, like, has the third hit also be an Assimilation. So this character ends up having good ways for him to take grid from other people, which is pretty interesting. There's also Force Function. This, if it hits, you will also basically recover the amount that you're using. And then Mortal Slide, which has the follow-up at the end. So he has ways that he can steal grid from the opponent that is not just throwing, which is nice. What should I say? His Vorpal trait, so when he has Vorpal, is that his Force Function Rusty Nails is way better. It is faster, has farther range, and has more damage, so then you get a better combo off it. And what's nice is that on hit, it crumbles. Oops. So you get a nice combo off it. That's a pretty basic combo. Please don't expect any more difficult combos. I tried my best to learn sort of very specific basic combos, so I could start learning the character rather than spend all my time learning fancy combos. Okay. let's get into more of the moveset ideas, right? 5A. This character's fastest normal is 6 frames, and it is this 5A right here. This is important because there's sort of a class distinction between 5 frame and 6 frame characters. There's a lot of frame traps that would work better on 6 frame characters than they do on 5 frame characters, and it sort of changes up a lot of how you have to do your options versus those characters. So 5A, it is a standing low, which is nice. That means he has a way to really mix people up from a standing position, which is kind of scary. So there is this and then this, but we'll get to that. But for the most part, you'll see it in... you'll kind of see it as, like, sort of tick throw situations. Sort of like that. It's only -1 on block, so it's really hard for people to see stuff like that and react to it. You can also rebeat into it pretty nicely from other things like... Oops. Come on, one more time. Like this. You'll see something pretty common to harass people. This will also get people to whiff green shields if you do a lot of 5C and Immortal Slide. Because a lot of the times when you cancel 5C and Immortal Slide, they'll try to shield it in order to get some free grid from you, and you don't want that. So rebeating to 5A every now and then is a pretty common thing to do as well. Kind of worthless in neutral because it kind of has short range. Doesn't really go all that far. You see, the hitbox is about as bad as it looks. But it is his fastest normal, so it has value in that, and it being -1 on block as well in a standing low, so you can do things like, whoops, like that, which end up being kind of tricky. Stuff like that, right? It's just like, it's a decent move, but it's very specific in its use. 5B, 5B, pretty short reach, for the most part. You're only going to use this in pressure and combos. Outside of that, it really doesn't have like a big use in terms of like being something like that, because this exists. Rebeating, sorry. What's really nice about it is that it's 0 on block, so it creates a lot of situations where you can get the opponent to start reacting to or committing to doing things. So you can do stuff like what's our knockdown, something like this, or you can do like I was doing before. You do. And so you can sort of a lot of the times mix up what you're doing after 5B because of it being 0 on block. Usually you can let it rock, and then even on block, the opponent has to respond with something. First off, react to it, not happening, and then afterwards respond to it accordingly. Otherwise, you're sort of just going to continue to take your pressure by doing stuff like this, and then making them constantly guess over and over again. Other than that, really, its only note is that it leans him forward quite a bit. So it's not as short range as this. But, you know, considering his other moves, pretty darn short range. 5C. So this move, 5C, is sort of like the reach, where kind of his reach starts as a character. Because it is a normal, and it can be rebeated. It can be special canceled. And the last thing is that when you full charge it, it becomes an overhead. Which is very useful because you can catch people quite off guard sometimes with this, especially if they're not reacting properly. The full charge one also does quite a bit of damage, but it also it also takes a ground bounce when you fully use it like that. So you're gonna have to like change your combos up a bit if you do that. So like, oops, that didn't really show it off that well, as you can see. But you can get around this quite easily. Oops. All right. One more time. I missed the last part with the delay. But that's the idea, is that you can get around that pretty easily. Because you usually use your ground bounce on that. It's not that big of a deal. It's like a neat overhead, right? It's an overhead that will surprise every now and then. You'll get something out of it here and there, but for the most part, you'll probably be using it. You'll probably be using it in combos. Yeah, that's really about it. Combos kind of scares people in terms of an overhead, so you can really get people to sort of start standing up in the middle of the screen. This was made by French Bread? Yes, it was. The same people who made the Mentally Blood fighting game. Which is why it has mechanics like rebeats and stuff like that. The meter looks quite similar. Scions in it. Yeah. I will say though that when you're trying to use this move in neutral, it felt way slower than when you see it from other people. This was the first weird thing that I sort of encountered with the character. But it's about a 3/4 screen 16 frame move that can be an overhead sometimes, so you know, it's always valuable, especially considering that when you do it into a mortal slide, you'll be able to get a nice combo off it. However, like I said, without using the full charge every now and then, which obviously takes way longer, you're giving up a lot of free shield without having to like make them guess by whiffing green shield by doing stuff like this. Okay. Whew. All right, 2A. So, considering that his 5A is a low, you would assume, and 6 frames, you would assume his 2A is 5 frames and a mid, but that is not the case. Its benefit over 5A as a move to panic with is that it has slightly longer range. There you go. See? There you go. There's also that. It can be chained into itself as opposed to 5A, which will automatically go into Smart Steer. Pretty standard tool. You don't actually use this in combos too much unless it starts with something like that. Where you're sort of staggering people, if you can catch people staggering. Because you can do stuff like this, which will scare people for sure. So there's, you know, it being a chainable, being a chainable mid that's only -2 on block gives it that ability. So just another way for you to sort of scare people into pressing buttons with Gordeau. Whew. All right, 2B. Pretty standard low forward style move. It's pretty fast at 8 frames. And has a really good hitbox for its animation. See? Which is nice. I would say probably the only problem with it is that it's slightly lower reach than you would like, but it's decent enough. It goes about the same distance as his 4B, which is the mid version we'll get to later. It's, other than it being sort of like a low poke, it's another low to go to, which is really nice because he has a few of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Having a lot of lows is obviously pretty nice because he has also a couple overheads to complement that as well. Other than that, you sort of see it in some combos. There's some other alternative routes that you can do when you use the ground bounce here. Oops. There you go. So it becomes useful for that as well. It's pretty darn fast. It's pretty darn fast in that regard. So there's a lot of situations where you kind of want to use either 2C, but it won't have as good range. Oops. Or sorry, not that you have as good range. Is that you've used it previously in the combo, so you don't want to like stale the damage a bit. And then also keeps you from using other moves for like ground bounces and stuff like that. So that's nice. 2C. So this is a pretty interesting move. This is probably one of Gordeau's more unique moves in his toolkit, and there's a few reasons for that. One is that it is a 8-frame low that Raido was nice enough to tell me has a better hitbox than I ever thought. Hold on, let me get this guy to block. All guard standing. As you can see. So this you wouldn't really expect this move to be a low, but it is, which is really nice. And the first hit has a really, really nice hitbox. That's the second hit. There you go. So it's about in the same range as 2B. What's really nice about this move is that, one, it's a fantastic anti-air that has a second hit being a very generous hitbox to it, and leaning forward slightly as well, so it makes it very, very nice for anti-airing. Second hit is a mid, though. Also, it being 8 frames makes it, and having a great hitbox means it's really good for meaty situations, because a lot of the times when you get people to block, normals, you'll get pushed out of a lot of your ranges quite quickly, especially if they're shielding, and you kind of get pushed out of all of your really good ranges afterwards quite easily. So and this is a lot of thanks to Noctis and Raido. I'll be referring to them quite frequently because I want to give them all the credit that I can possibly give them for helping me out learning this, because I felt like 2C was one of the few things that I didn't understand when I was, well, I shouldn't say few. There's a lot I didn't understand. 2C was one of the things I didn't understand when I was first sort of trying to learn the character, but there's a lot that goes into this move because it got a great hitbox, because it's got a second hit, because it's a normal and you can rebeat it like this, or you can go into a special cancel ability. You can special cancel it. You can mix people up by doing first hit, both hits, whiff rebeat. There's so much that you can do with this move, and it's enabled by the fact that it's fast, got a great hitbox. Scary because it has a great scary because it's got a second hit. It's a C button, so it starts fantastic combos. It's also his his strong anti-air. Just a lot of really, really good stuff to this move. Generally speaking, what you want to use this move, like as a beginner, I would say from where I was learning it from, I want to use it as an anti-air, and you use it as a meaty tool. So that when knocked down, do stuff like this. You can get people to sort of do stuff you want like this. And this ends up being a lot of the ways you can scare people into doing stuff that they don't want to do. Oops. Right. What else should I say about this move? I think that's pretty good. This move, I'll probably go back into playing Gordeau a little bit before I start moving on to the next character that we're going to learn. But I really want to sort of mess with this move a lot more, because once I was sort of opened up to the idea of how this move is supposed to work, really, like, the world's your oyster when it becomes, when it comes to using this move. It's sort of like the start of everything. It's really, really nice, and I sort of really want to mess with it a little bit more. But yeah, I would say for like, if you're like in my position where you're sort of just learning the character, starting with just using stuff like 2C aiming, 2C 5B, which leaves you at 0, right? 2 hits with 5A, stuff like that will get you really, really far, I believe. And then you can mix it up by pressing another button here, right? Or you can do go into overheads. There's a lot of stuff that you can do here. Whew. Okay. Just don't whiff it. The problem is that it's kind of hard to whiff if you don't get shielded out of the ranges, and you probably, once you see shields or you get out into getting pushed out of this range, you should probably stop using it. But please don't whiff it. It is takes forever and a half for you to jump to start after that. All right. Jump normals. Doesn't have any special air normals, so there's nothing complicated about it. The only thing, but the 3 that he has are pretty unique in terms of its uses. So he has Jump A. Jump A is a pretty common air to ground normal. It's got you'd like a better hitbox, but it is what it is. What's nice about it is that it actually recovers pretty quickly in terms of an air normal. So there's a lot of tricky stuff that you can do with it that I've seen and implemented in my own Gordeau play, which is like doing Assault A whiff like this, which will scare people because you have this, but we'll talk about that in a second. So doing stuff like this can scare a lot of people into sort of being scared of your assault option, because you can do it slightly later and then fall down, and then you're actually hitting them, right? But if you do it at the apex of your jump, you can keep them out of block stun and set them up for a command grab, which is really cool, right? Jump B. You'll see this a lot for combos because it has 2 hits. So it has a lot of ability in sort of stalling Gordeau into the air while they're hitting them, because a lot of the times you want to end the combo with like 3C into like 3C into something else, like Mortal Slide, or like I was doing before where I was doing 4B into command grab. A lot of that stuff becomes accessible because of Jump B. Jump B has 2 hits. It's the farthest reaching air normal, I think. Yeah. Well, the second hits anyway. So it becomes really annoying when you assault and just do it immediately, because usually when you assault and press a button immediately, oops. You don't really get a lot of benefit out of it, but because it has 2 hits, oops, you're able to combo off it pretty easily. I should do this. Sort of like that is something that you can do with, like, that is allowed because jump B is has 2 hits like that. Whew, all right, jump C. Woo. Jump C is a pretty important air normal for a variety of reasons. One of them is that it's great for combos, obviously, because the charge version of it slams people into the ground. So this is a pretty common combo that you'll see. Like that. But also it's useful because of its lower arcing hitbox. So from assault positions, you can do it. Oops. While you're rising. So you can do it immediately into it. And still combo into A normals, which is really nice. There's also the charge version, which is super good, because it'll leave you plus in almost every situation. But also secondarily is that you can actually charge, you can do assault charge, jump C, and still have it hit. And the reason why that's important is because there's a lot of characters that actually can't do this with their charge normal. If they do an immediate charge, there's a very likely chance that they actually can't do the full charge from assaults, or if they do it from the apex of the assaults like this, not immediately, that it'll whiff by the time it'll hit the ground. So it kind of gives away when they're trying to do like silly silly increase shenanigans. A lot of the times you can see that pretty easily by one time that the increase starts. If it starts like right here, then you're like, oh, okay, well, he's gonna whiff it. But Gordeau is a little bit quicker, so you can do it from the apex of the jump, which becomes quite scary. A lot of other characters don't do that, but it also means that it's harder for him to whiff it. So as you can see, I'm trying my best to whiff it, but like sort of by that time, you've sort of already understood that there's not a normal coming out. So it's sort of the opposite in terms of how you see the increase mix up. All right. And get into some command normals. The command normals are really important because they offer him a lot of they open up a lot of his identity, I think. 6B being pretty important one. It is a normal overhead, as in like it is an overhead that is out of his normal set. So that means you can Gatling or what's the Undernight term for it? There's an Undernight term for hold on. I always forget it. It's not Passing Link? Yes. I don't want to say Gatlings because Gatlings is Guilty Gear. Passing Link. You can Passing Link into you can Passing Link into 6B, which is really nice. So you can do stuff like that, which it can be a very nice mix-up in terms of getting people to shield the wrong way, break shields, because if they're going to low shields, by putting a bunch of lows in there, then you might be able to get them to, you might be able to crack them open with an overhead like this. What's nice is that it's an overhead that you can combo off of as well by canceling and aiming. Oops, wrong combo. Ugh. Anyway, you delay the last hit and you get a full combo there. But that stuff's really nice. The second really nice thing about it is that it leans itself forward, so you can actually do a lot of normals before you do the overhead and still get it to come out. It's kind of slow at 27 frames, but you will get people to eat this. The second thing is that it's actually also safe. It's only -3 on block, so unless it gets shielded, you can sort of let it rock. But a lot of the times, because you want the reward of it getting hit, you'll cancel into aiming in order for you to either keep the pressure up or make sure that you're not going to get punished by getting shielded. Other than that, I think like this is sort of sometimes food because of how slow it is, because it's a normal, because it's an overhead. It also ends all of your normal possibilities, or sorry, yeah, because it's a normal overhead, it ends all of your normal possibilities. So, like I'm saying, like you can't rebeat it or passing link back into other normals. So this will be the end of it. So kind of use this as sometimes food, as opposed to like charge 5C, which you can rebeat into something but takes way longer, right? Oops. Woo! Alright, cool. So we have 4B. 4B, I think, got... 4B was not a normal you initially had. I think he got that in ST? I think he had this in ST. I don't think he had this in EL. It is the same animation as 66B. But it's just done from the 4B position. It is a really, I would say it's one of the nice moves. It's a nice move. It's a nice move. And why I say it's a nice move is because, as you can see where we're going through this, character's pretty stubby, all things considered. And you'll get to a point where he's exhausted all of his normals. And so you kind of get to a point where you know what's going to happen next pretty easily with Gordeau because of how his normal set works. This became like a really nice way for him to add another normal into it while allowing the character to sort of be threatening still after he gets pushed out of, after he uses 2B. Because a lot of the times after he used 2B or 2C, for the most part, the options that he had became very limited. Now he had another one in terms of range, which is really nice. This becomes a pretty go-to button as well from doing other things as well. So you can, a lot of the times I see a lot of people do stuff like this because it's just so consistent in its range once you're hitting stuff like this. So you'll see it a lot in normals and stuff like that, especially when they're trying to do stuff like fish for a hit. By the time you get to 4B, you probably should have recognized whether you got a hit or not. Nice thing also is that he leans back when he does it. Let's see if I can get this right. There you go. He leans back when he does it. So he does actually retract his hitbox a little bit. So sometimes he'll eat up blows while doing this move. It's not like Tekken, it doesn't crush lows. But you'll eat lows with this sometimes, which is nice. So you can out footsie people with this because it does have a very nice hitbox. All right. Very important command normal, 3C. This is... how to say? 3C is a forward-moving low that is plus on block and cancelable on hit and does a decent amount of damage. and also is chargeable for more range and also more plus frames. This is a pretty finicky move because of the way that it works, right? It's advantage based off of a slide move, so that means you can have more or less frame advantage. But you can consider this sort of his more traditional sweep, like where Hyde would have his 2C. It's about 10 to 11 frames as well. Gordeau's is as well. The only difference being obviously is that his startup frames, 11 frame will be right here when you're out here, so it's going to take a little bit longer for him to get to that part. So, you know, take that with precaution. It's not something that you should throw out in neutral all the time, but considering that you're in this range, a lot of the times characters have faster options for you to deal with. There's a lot of times you can sort of walk back and whiff punish 2C or 3C, which is kind of pretty sick. Being able to do that sort of thing because it's one of his faster, farther reaching normals that's super active, allows it to be really, really useful in those situations, and really, really annoying for those players who really want to like press buttons in that range and they get whiff punished 3C into some other shit. It has a really, really long knockdown property to it, so if you hit it raw, you don't confirm it. You can always pick it up afterwards. You'll also see sometimes, what was the combo I was doing earlier? Because I can't come up with something in my head right now. You'll see some things like this sometimes. Oops. What was I doing? Oh, like this. There you go. You can actually combo out of it using 2C if you just hit it like that and it knocks down, and it takes a knockdown. Oops. Oops. Something like that. Which is really neat. So that a lot of the times you can actually like confirm this with the greatest of ease. It can be cancelable. It can be canceled on block. But you can still chain shift it, which is really nice. So what I mean by that is that if it's not cancelable on block, then you can sort of just input the cancel no matter what, or you can kind of let it rock, and you can pretty much get similar damaging combos based off of that, which is really nice. Whoops. Anyway. All right. We got 6-6B and 6-6C. These are pretty interesting moves. We have 6-6B, which is the same animation as this 4B. Kind of actually 6-6B came first. It's pretty darn fast at 10 frame startup, and is really nice that it's also special cancelable. So you can cancel into aiming to keep the pressure up. It's only -2 on block, and if it gets a counter hit, ow, puts them on their butt, which is really nice. Oops. Oops. Ah. I'm forgetting the combo off the top of my head. Sure, we'll do that for now. Anyway, world's your oyster when you hit this move on counter hit, which is really nice. A lot of the times you can do stuff, you can do some pretty cheeky stuff with this by sort of leaning into it from here. It being -2 means you can also scare people into pressing buttons afterwards. Because it's special cancelable, you can do stuff like this. Sorry, I should take him off that. Into pressing buttons afterwards. People sometimes think that they can take their turn. Whoops. After 6-6B, you can cancel into aiming, and you can really scare people into doing stuff that they don't want to do. 6-6C. So there's some combo potential for this move, which is really nice because it does quite a bit of damage. As you can see, it does quite a bit of damage. It also takes a wall bounce, but it is. Oops. Oops, I already used my bounces. My bad. Anyway, the point being is that it is really nice that it's also special cancelable. The super cool benefit of this is that it's actually plus on block. So secondarily, just like the slide as well, you have the ability to use this on Oki or use this to catch backdashes, which is really nice. So if you think someone's going to do a backdash in a certain space, boom, this goes so far. This is me doing it from my dash macro. See? If I do dash 6C, you go insanely far. As opposed to like dash 6B. Oops. Right. Super cool move that has a lot of reward on hit. You can also use it to end combos where I was doing some other combos. I've seen a lot of people do 6-6C into Mortal Slide. Gets Assimilation. Right. But it's slightly harder, so I avoided learning those combos for a little bit. Real benefit is that it is actually just cancelable on block, so you can cancel into aiming. That's super sick. If you feel like it's going to hit, oops, you can cancel into Mortal Slide. If it doesn't, if you cancel into Mortal Slide, and let's say, if you cancel into Mortal Slide and let's say it doesn't hit, right? You can always make sure that when you're going to do that sort of thing, maybe keep some meter on the side for you so you can cancel into EX Mortal Slide or chain shift out of it. Oops. Also secondarily is that this is a dash move, so make sure that you're going into neutral afterwards or rolling all the way back to back and rolling forward like this. So you're almost doing a half circle to make sure that you're not getting Grim Reaper, because if you do this too fast, you will get Grim Reaper like that, as you can see. But you can make sure to not do that by either making sure that you go back to neutral or rolling the stick and doing a full half circle forward. There's a lot of games where actually doing a half circle forward, if there's no half circle implemented into the game, will make sure that the game actually takes the input of a quarter forward rather than a DP. So you can do something like 6, this is using numpad notation, 6, 4, 1, 2, 3, 6, and you make sure that you'll get like, whoops. You'll make sure you get your quarter forward move. Like I said, also, you can just make sure your stick goes to neutral as well. I think that's it. Am I missing anything? Oh, Rusty Nail. So, Rusty Nail. This move got pretty buffed in Claire, and it became a pretty important move in his toolkit. And it's sort of like what I consider to be how to say, this is what I sort of consider Gordeau's like really interesting like curve idea that this character has. And what I mean by that is sort of, this is the point where I kind of start talking about the general archetype of the character, because I feel like Rusty Nail is like the point in which it is the most apparent. And what I mean by that is, as we were saying at the beginning of the stream, Gordeau actually has a lot of moves where he steals Vorpal outside of throws on its own, right? So, Assimilation, the end of Mortal Slide, which is just an Assimilation, and a hit force function. But just like every other force function, it has a cost of 1 grid, right? Which is really, really nice. Or, sorry, not really nice. It is obviously, like, important for you to recognize, because if you're whiffing it, you're going to lose it, right? So you need grid in order, or you don't need grid in order to make it work. But, the reason why it's so good to have Vorpal with this character is because I went too far down. Oh, it gave it to me still. That's right. Defaults. Okay. So I can see it has great range, right? Still, like, outside of this is probably his, like, farthest reaching move outside of Mortal Slide and Grim Reaper, which leans him forward a little bit. However, when you're in Vorpal, it has even farther range. It is faster by 3 frames, and it only consumes half a grid block instead of a full grid block, so that it is slightly less taxing on your grid bar. Secondarily, what's nice about it is that it is actually +1 on block, so a lot of the times you can catch people by doing Rusty Nail into Rusty Nail, and it vacuums a little bit for better or for worse, depending on which character you're playing against. The reason why it's important, even though you get it back on block, the reason why it's important for you to recognize that it is a cost is because it's crouchable. So that line on the bottom does go through Hyde's head, but he does have the ability to crouch it. So what does that mean? Well, that means basically is that, like, because this move is so good, it gets faster startup, it gets longer reach, it has better damage, so it has better combos. You're gonna really focus on taking grid from your opponent through assimilations. This is a super important part of the character. And then once you're able to take the grid away from your opponent and basically win Vorpal, then this becomes a very, very useful tool. Obviously, as well, we'll get into that in a second. I should just leave it at neutral. Okay. Super important move. I mean, second nice thing about it. I almost got it. Second thing nice about it is that it crumples on hit, so it is very easy to react to on a combo. God darn it. All right. Woo. Throw. He has a very unique throw. It is something to consider for sure. He is one of the few characters in the game that actually gets to combo off his throws and makes his RPS really scary. So you can actually go for a better reward with a normal throw than you can do with a command grab. So you have to really consider your pros and cons when using normal throw or using assimilation. The first thing to consider is that if you're in mid screen, you can hold down and you'll put them right at your feet, and you can actually combo this with 5A. It's 1 frame, so forgive me if I mess this up a couple times, but then buffer's nice enough for you to not be so bad. Sort of just a timing thing, once you learn how to do it. There you go. Yeah, it's just a timing thing. The buffer's nice enough for it to not actually be a one-frame link, but in-game it's a one-frame link. This allows you to do combos mid-screen, which is really nice. Ugh. Oops. But that's the idea. He can also get combos using the side throw, but they're more specific, and to be fair, I really didn't learn them, but they are possible. Oops. There you go. Proof of concept, at least. But you can learn them. So it's basically your lesson for, or sorry, your sort of back and forth in decision on what you want to use in terms of a throw versus like throw hold down or throw them against the wall is there's a couple things to consider. One, is the corner close enough for you to get a combo anyway, because you'll be able to get better damage with this one. You see this one does 510. This one does 1450, so you get slightly more damage out of using the side throw. And then secondarily speaking is that if you can get position out of it, it might be sometimes better for you to actually throw them into the wall. But there's also some tricky stuff you can do by re-throwing them here. I've seen this quite a bit. This is a very scary way for you to steal a lot of grid really quickly. Because a lot of the times you'll see people go for, like, very rarely you'll not see people go for the combo. So people are like, oh, I got hit by this, I'm going to expect the combo. But instead what happens is that they get dropped on their butts, and then you try your best not to gold throw that, and then you get like a lot of blocks out of that. Okay. Not to say anything about Veil Off, other than that this character has a very high level of importance put on Vorpal, so consider when you're going to use stuff like Veil Off, because using it to strip Vorpal, I think. Oops. Oh, I don't have meter. There it is. Using it to strip Vorpal like that is pretty important. Being able to strip Vorpal from your opponent, and being able to give yourself a better opportunity to get Vorpal yourself is a pretty darn important aspect for the character. Reminder that during Vorpal also that you gain a lot of grid from just you doing your general grid stuff. Okay, specials. You got Mortal Slide. This is probably one of, like, this is a lot of, like, what the character is really known about. Like, it's this and Grim Reaper. So, the reason why is because it's sort of the thing that allows him to combo at full screen. So when you hit stuff, when you hit stuff like Rusty Nail, you're able to combo off it because of Mortal Slide. He has two versions of it. He has A, that is the it has A, which is the faster but shorter reach. This is usually a lot of the times the decision between A, B, and A and B is if you can use B or not, or if you've already used B. So if you can't use B, you usually use A. If you've already used B, you'll use A, or vice versa, stuff like that. It's safe on block. The A version safe on block, which is really nice. Obviously, you can use it at its range, which becomes really good. It's hard to jump because of the second hit arcing up like it does there, so jumping over it is almost impossible. It starts combos. It ends combos. It's a huge reason why his damage is very, very consistent. He has a very consistent high amount of damage, which is really, really nice. B, let's see if I can show this off right. There it is. So, A version, faster but has shorter reach. B version, longer reach. So basically, you kind of only use it off certain things that allow for that time, for that extra startup for it to be able to hit. Very notably, Charge 5C will do that for you. So a lot of times, you'll see it because... You'll see it right there because of... whoops. Because you have all the time in the world to hit it. And that way, also, you're able to... Oops. Oh my god. That way, also, if you do the better combo like this... Ah, come on. If you're able to hit that, it allows you to do the other Mortal Slide, and that way you don't stale the damage, which is really nice. C version. So C version is a very interesting utility. It is a plus on block version of Mortal Slide that brings them closer. Plus enough for you to do whatever you want, and if it's shielded, it's only +2, but normally it's +5. The main ways you really see this is actually on block. Because of it being +5, right? So a lot of the times if you're sort of betting on getting a hit on something, right, and you kind of want them to just sit down, you do Grim Reaper, you cancel into EX Mortal Slide, and they're +5 right in front of you. You're allowed to do a lot of things. If you see them shield, right, then you go for something a little bit faster. Usually go for a 5A if they're in range, because that's a 4-frame gap. So it does limit a lot of your options afterwards. But if you hit it, it does a decent amount of damage put together, which is really nice. Decent combo under, but it's okay. There's better ways to use your meter, but if you really need to kill somebody, it's a combo under. All right. I should have mentioned that Mortal Slide's also a Rekka. So that's the first hit. The second hit's the part that pulls him in. The third hit is a part of the Assimilation, will let you steal grid. This is also why it's super important, is because as a finisher, it lets you steal grid towards the very end, and it allows you to play the Vorpal cycle better than most other characters do just by hitting your combo. It itself, the second hit, the only thing to notice about it is that it has a lot of untech time. So usually the combo is doing the second hit and then picking up off it like this. Whew. Okay. Going down the list. Assimilation. Oh, no, wait. Actually, that's the next. Next one's Grim Reaper. My bad. Just want to go down the list, and that way I keep track of everything. All right. Grim Reaper. So, Grim Reaper is a very infamous move because it's pretty fast for what it is, and it is it's pretty fast for what it is, and it covers a tremendous amount of the screen with a hitbox. Not all of it, obviously, but a good amount of it as it moves forward. For a lot of that reason, it becomes kind of a pain in the ass to deal with, but it's pretty darn good. This move also, so the two big things to notice into it is that, one, the A version is slower but safer on block, The B version is faster and has its head and dive invul quicker than the A version, but way less advantage. It's also whiff cancelable, which is really nice. So if you end up doing, oops, here. Stuff like that. That's really nice. You can do it for the B version too, which is nice, but it's not something you really want to do. The secondarily really nice thing about it is that because it has the follow-up now in Claire, it's really nice for you to get a combo off of. Even if you're planning on just doing the first hit, there's certain ranges where you could still get a combo off it. I'm only picking directly the corner because it's easy, but it's very easy for you to get a combo if you change shift after the first hit. Also, obviously, second thing that's nice about Grim Reaper is that it has the ability to combo into that, so you're able to do things like, no, please sit down, and then you're able to, like, basically put the plus frame Mortal Slide afterwards. EX version is fully invul for the entirety of its startup, which is really nice. And I will bring up why that's nice in a second as we just move along. So, yeah, he has this new move that he got in Claire. It's really nice. It's different depending on which one you use. So if you use the A follow-up, it's slightly less negative, and it has a smaller gap, I believe. But if you use the B version, there's a slightly bigger gap. There is a gap between it, and a lot of the times some of the initial hits of the follow-up will whiff if you're very close to them and crouching. So it's sort of a scary move. You kind of want to use it in really specific situations. It won't always hit when you do Grim Reaper, but it's like this nice thing. You get like basically a DP's amount of damage like every other character now. Alright, Assimilation. Assimilation is, I think, where this character really comes together. This character has a command grab, which is crazy. And I say that's crazy because a character that has this sort of long range really probably shouldn't have a command grab, but I think it's what makes him super interesting as a character. And so the real key thing to know about this is, just like I was saying before, his unique trait as a character is that his command grab steals grid. So if I can have the character start with a little bit of grid. Oops. Oh, that's EXs. Just leave it on that. Okay. There you go. Okay. So, just to demonstrate it more clearly, as you can see, once I hit the assimilation, I steal a whole grid block away from them. Which is really nice. Secondarily, which is also really nice. Whoops. Player Vorpal. There you go. What's really nice is that with chain shift, you have the ability to combo out of it, which makes it very, very scary once you have chain shift, right? Having Vorpal with this character is super duper important. That's a bad combo, but it is a combo. All right. So A version is a grounded command grab. It's 11 frames. It's super duper good. Like I said, it's going to facilitate a lot of your game plan. It's not as good range as you would like, but not as bad range as it's as you think it is. B version is slightly faster and is an anti-air command grab. It has some head invul, so you can use this as an anti-air sometimes, and it's pretty cheeky for that. Sometimes a combo ender, but for me, it's like lazy combo ender. It steals a little bit of grid, so you can use it in that regard if you like, if the cycle's almost up. If the cycle's almost up, you're like, oh, I need some grid now. You can do it into the anti-air command grab version. And this is sort of where it comes all together for his meter. He has the C version, which is fully invul on startup, which is really, really good. Really, really, really good. So the thing is that what's really neat about this character with meter is that he has sort of like an actual mix-up of whether you want to block or get hit by his reversals. Because if you're blocking in front of him, expecting him to do EX Grim Reaper, you're gonna get hit by that. And if you're trying to, if you're gonna jump thinking that he's going to do the command grab, if I get the run here, oh, there you go. So at any point, this character is absurdly scary when you're trying to do Oki on him, which makes it sort of a little bit scary when you're trying to go back and forth in neutral in that situation, or on Oki. It also opens up a lot of opportunities for him to actually just wake up, press buttons, because if you're blocking, assuming that he's going to do EX Grim Reaper, he can just straight shake his turn, which becomes quite scary. Does take meter, obviously, so that sort of chicken game is more useful, obviously, when you have meter. But it does exist. Its assimilation becomes extremely important to his kits. All right. Aiming. Precise aim. Precise aim is where he puts his staff down like that. It is a pretty interesting move because it sort of also opens up his chicken game a little bit because it is advantage on block. It's actually +7 unshielded, which is super good. Its big detriment is that it has it takes a knockdown, and it has quite slow startup. So a lot of the times there's situations where there's gaps created by doing stuff into aiming. Stuff like that. Like I was saying before, where you're doing stuff like canceling into like 5B, right? Keeping the pressure up with aiming. That way your +0 seems like it's a little bit better than normal by doing aiming into it. But it's just this really nice way for people to think about, oh man, he's going to reset his pressure, right? It does push you out of range for a lot of things. However, obviously you'll still be in 3C range, especially if they're +7. You can do 3C into that, and it becomes quite scary for them to do anything afterwards, and you're doing plus frames into plus frames. If they shift or budge a little bit, they might get hit by that, and then you're able to combo off it. It's really nice for very specific things, like comboing off of 6B, as I watched before. It's got a decent enough hitbox, but because the knockdown isn't that, there isn't a lot of untech time on it. If you do hit it this far, it'll be hard for you to combo off it in any sort of way. Kind of really is that you kind of want to be in 2B range in order to combo off it. Which is way you sort of get a little bit of extra damage out of it. Even if you do it raw, I mean, like this. It has some combo ability too. I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head. Oops. I hate doing 2C, 2A, but it is a fact of Under Night. there is the B version of it. So the interesting part about the B version is that it's actually faster than the A version. So a lot of the times it will actually close a lot of the gaps that other situations or other cancels would do. So doing stuff like 5B aiming, which normally has a gap in it, you can do stuff like this and it might catch people, which is really, really tricky, but obviously unsafe on block. For that reason specifically, when you do it, make sure you have meter or CS afterwards. Last hit's an overhead too, so sometimes you catch people off guard by them like autopiloting down back and trying to shield some stuff. Precise aim C or EX aiming is a reversal, which has a lot of invulnerability, but is entirely your asshole if it's on if it's whiffed or it's on block, because it has an absurd amount of recovery time. So a lot of the times you sort of stick to doing this, but there's places where that also becomes useful because it's 9 frames as opposed to no, Grim Reaper is 7 frames, my bad. So yeah, it's just a reversal move basically. It also has really interesting weird benefit of it being whoops. It's probably too much for the combo. But if you hit them with it in the air, you'll actually get to combo off of it in really weird situations. And a lot of the times this could be a way for you to side switch, actually, which is really, really interesting. You don't normally see stuff like that. So in that sense, it becomes pretty unique in that use. All right. Air Mortal Slide, or called Mortal Glide, is a pretty darn weird move, but to go over it pretty darn quickly, he has an A version that's sort of, it's like an downward arcing move that has a pretty nice hitbox actually. Once it's starting up in the air, as in once you've like inputted the move, it's actually quite fast at 7 frames. But for the most part, you'll only see this in certain combos, especially if you're doing, oops. There's some silly combos with that I don't know, but EX Mortal Glide does extend some combos. The A version keeps them in place. The B version leans them back quite a bit, so it becomes a weird air-to-air thing that you can use sometimes. So this one's slightly more defensively. The EX version's actually a reversal and has some strike and projectile involved, which is really weird. If you have time to jump randomly for some reason, this becomes not the craziest thing to use. Oops. There you go. There's some stuff you can combo in and out of it with, but I don't know them specifically. In general, I wouldn't suggest, like, when you're first learning the character to use your meter like that. I'd suggest, like, initially to use your meter by using it on this, using it on this, using it on this. All right, aiming in the air or done by quarterback instead of 2-2 in the air does this weird spinny thing. Honestly, there isn't much to say about this one other than it's kind of tricky. The real cool thing about this one specifically is that the B version has a slam down afterwards, right? So a lot of the times you can catch people off guard. By doing that into CS or canceling into EX Mortal Slide for extra plus frames. The A version just has this part to it, which you can combo off of, but the problem being is that it does entirely whiff on crouchers, so it's not very useful in that regard. There's some weird corpse hoppy stuff that you can do with it. Oops. But you don't see that all that often. It's pretty tricky. For the most part, I would, if you're learning the character to start, as I have, I'm pretty much avoiding this move altogether. But you can do stuff like that. The C version does the same thing in the air of being a way for you to side switch, which is really neat. So you can do stuff like this. Oops, wrong way. And side switch into a combo really nicely. Sorry, my nose is bugging the shit out of me. Oh, God. Ooh. Okay. Last bit. Super meter. Turbulence. Sada, 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 sada. Best thing to note about this move is that it's actually quite safe on block if you let the whole thing rock, but there is a gap between the 4th and the 5th hit. So that's the part where you're supposed to punish that. I'm not going to show it. Learn your own punishes for that, please. Because how many times have I seen this move go unpunished is ridiculous. Okay. So that's pretty much the move set for the character. I want to say some few things about the character before we sort of get started. And I want to look up some match footage for the rest of the stream. Okay. So, again, I want to thank Noctis and Raito for helping me out with this. I'm going to say that time and time again, because they were very, very nice. For the most part, generally speaking, when you approach this character, you're going to recognize that there are 2 ranges in which this character operates in. This range and this range right here, which is extremely short range and about like slightly farther than mid-range, around right here, right? These are the 2 places where this character operates. They're 2 very distinct places as well. They don't, once you, like, they're very specific in the sense of, like, getting outside of these ranges usually puts you at a detriment. Being in this range where Hyde excels usually means you can't do anything because these moves don't have enough range for him to contest into it. His moves are faster and they do the same thing and they lead to damage. These moves generally they're scarier to use in this range. Secondarily as well is that once you're outside in like this range right here, there's nothing for you to threaten the character with, and there's characters that can threaten you with it, like Batista, Yuzu, Merkava, stuff like that. So then you actually end up being outside of useful range here as well, and there's no way for you to close the gap other than to dash block, and you have a 7-frame dash, which means that it's slightly slower than normal, and you'll get hit out of more things than some other characters will. That all being said, he also, like I was saying in the beginning of the stream as well, sorry, that his normals are actually slower than normal. He's a 6-frame character with his 5A that has very, very short range. His normal 2A is a mid, and it's 7 frames, and it still doesn't have that good range for what it is. And this is kind of slow. This is alright, but it gives up grid meter quite easily, or grid blocks quite easily. He's kind of slow of a character altogether, and sort of a lot of the times that you have the ability to sort of really put pressure on the character is with Rusty Nail, which is safe on block. Well, it's +1 on block actually, but takes grid, so it's sort of you have to make sure they're standing to block it, sort of thing. And also doing stuff like 5C rebeat if you have a perfect time to sort of weave that in before they do a faster move in that time, right? So what does this character do? a lot of this character is sort of navigating this range right here to get into this range right here, which is pretty weird because normally I was like, oh, this character has really long range, right? It's obviously that he's going to want to operate at that range as best as he can. Actually, no, this range is sort of like a, this range is a, how to say, this range enables him to get into this range where he actually wants to be, because this is where a lot of his mix-ups actually end up being. This is where it ends up being a lot of his damage. And what's nice about him is that he actually has very consistent damage. As you can see, I finally hit it. That's pretty good that's pretty good damage for an overhead, right? Oops. That's sort of a bread and butter, and at full screen still does a pretty decent amount of damage. There's better combos to do off of that. That's just me, like, pressing buttons, basically. Oops. Oops, takes a knockdown. All of his combos are pretty simple, I should say, for the most part. No, where am I going with this? So yeah, okay, no, I've got to go back to. So, because of his normals being quite stubby in general, you want to use this range to get into this range, right? Once you get into this range, this is where the character really excels. He has a command grab, he has a standing low, he has 2 overheads that are normals, which are really good. And he also has the ability to sort of keep his pressure up using stagger pressure of some sort, and keeps plus frames in a lot of ways by either using 3C, 6C, aiming. Those are all things that become very, very powerful. Also, as well, is that he has a really good scary tick throw game by having stuff like 2C, which is incredibly threatening. Being able to use that as well. In conjunction with his throws, allows him for a real good strike throw setup, or strike throw game plan, that allows him to also access the overheads once people are only thinking about strike throws. So really, he has a threefold, like, rock, paper, scissors mix-up game that becomes really scary. Secondarily speaking is that once he also has meter, he's really hard to pin down, like I was saying before. Having a fully invincible EX command grab that allows him to catch people while they're on the ground, or a fully invincible DP that catches people in the air means people have to constantly guess on their own Oki once you have meter, which becomes quite frightening. So, as I was saying before, like, for the most part, he has to sort of crutch on these 2 moves in this range in order for him to start his pressure. But there's a lot of characters that sort of also beat him in that pressure, like Batista and Yuzu. So what does he do? Basically, you're playing a lot around the grid. Grid is so important for this character, and in a way that you can actually play a lot around how the grid plays for you. Because you can steal Vorpal like that, and because your regular combo steals you Vorpal as well, you have 2 options. You can either spend it on stuff like this and keep people locked down by using your chain shift and giving up your Vorpal that way, or you can use it on your increased damage Rusty Nail that allows you for more pressure and scarier options. Either way is actually good, and a lot of the times the best Gordeau players will actually think about the cycle a lot when they do that sort of thing. So it's like early in the cycle, right? If you're going to think about that, then it's like, all right, well, if it's early in the cycle, I'm just going to do it here. I'm going to get the combo, and then we're in the cycle still. That way I can start doing Oki on Assimilation. And I can really mess with people, right? Get that grid back up. Okay, I've got the grid back up. Cool. I can start using Rusty Nail again. Or doing stuff like this only to keep people locked down. And using meter that way in order to keep people locked down, using your big normals like, or your big specials like Grim Reaper. in that sense that he has an absurdly really he plays around Vorpal than most other characters, because without Vorpal he's kind of lackluster in a lot of situations. Even against characters that he outranges like Akatsuki, he sort of becomes pretty one-dimensional when he's trying to sort of keep people out or get in. However, once he gets Vorpal, he has the option to really keep pressure at this half screen range, because he has a 9-frame move that moves him forward, has a great hitbox to it, can combo off of it if he has chain shift, and has the ability to sort of just start plus frames wherever he wants. So he's sitting in this range, Grim Reaper, and then you're sort of in right afterwards. In that sense, he becomes one of the most reliant characters on Vorpal, but as I said before, he has tools that allow him to do that. So what am I looking with this character? Like I said before, this character is really looking to use this range to get into this range. Once you get into this range, this is where the character really excels and shines, because you have a 3-way mix-up. You have able to play high-low, strike, throw. You're able to really be tricky with stuff like this. You have the being able to force plus frames on the opponent allows you to make people have people basically guess a lot of the time. Hold on. Simultaneously, as well, is that he's really hard to get onto. 2C is a great anti-air. He has quarterback. Oh, Tama, thank you for the raid, man. I really appreciate it. How's it going, everybody? I am just going through a little bit of Gordeau stuff today. And I'll be actually looking at some match footage in just a second. Actually, I should probably set that up while we're raiding here. So yeah, he has a unique anti-air for any situation. Good luck with the Gording. Thank you. I appreciate it. So yeah, I really, so far, like when playing this character, I've really struggled with sort of keeping people in this range and sort of getting them to do what I want them to do. And that's largely because I wasn't good enough at playing with people in terms of my plus frames. A lot of the times I was just doing pretty simple strike throw stuff like this and trying to fish these assimilations in there. But it becomes kind of too obvious when the only thing you're looking for is assimilation. Rather, keeping pressure up just generally with plus frames, it becomes scary in its own right. And so a lot of people will actually open themselves up once you're just kind of putting plus frames on the plus frames. Once they start sitting down and staying put, start putting assimilations in there.